Hey guys, how are you doing? This is Rob of Rule of Two Review. Welcome back to the channel. And wow, we just got done watching a pretty interesting indie world Nintendo Direct type presentation. And I have to say, as somebody who isn't a huge fan of indie games, or at least somebody who doesn't really have the time to spend playing a lot of indie games that release, it was definitely nice to see one of these shows coming out right before the end of the year. 2019 is almost over. All of the big games across all of the platforms have officially released. There's really nothing yet to go for 2019. And with 2020 on the horizon, obviously everyone is turning their attention towards that year. And the first quarter, actually the first half of the year, which is insane as far as huge releases and AAA releases and exclusives and whatnot. It's going to be a really crazy year for gaming in really the best way possible. But Nintendo decided here in just the second week of December to give us an Indie World presentation to kind of prepare us for a lot of what the indie game landscape on the Nintendo Switch is going to look like in 2020. And, like I just said, and a lot of you guys already even know, I'm really not a big indie game player. It's not because I dislike them or I'm mad at them or I think they're terrible or whatever. It's none of that. It's just that they usually don't appeal to me because they're smaller bite-sized experiences, and I'm also too busy to kind of fill my time between big releases with a bunch of small releases. I really only have time to get to the big releases, and sometimes I don't even have time to get to those. But either way, I was still excited to see that an Indie World presentation was going to happen, and definitely very curious to see if anything really standout or awesome showed up in the show that excited me, or at least just kind of gave us a bigger picture of what 2020 is going to look like for the Switch. And I do have to admit that overall, it did do that. It did paint a pretty broad and very large picture of a ton of indie games that we'll be playing throughout all of 2020, on the Nintendo Switch specifically at least. They had a lot of games for the first quarter of the year, and also a couple of games stated for late 2020. So they really kind of ran the whole gamut of the entire year, which for a lot of indie game fans, which I'm sure is most of you guys out there, is definitely pretty exciting. Now, I'm just going to go ahead and run through a couple of the games that were standout to me. I will tell you there's really only maybe 2 releases across this entire Indie World presentation that were actually super interesting to me. Almost everything else, they don't look bad. None of the games look bad, but most of them just don't appeal to me. So I want to get that out of the way ahead of time. But still, there was one amazing surprise that has me over the moon excited, which I'll get to, of course, eventually. But let's just run through some of the stuff that happened that I thought was fairly notable. The very first thing that they showed was Sports Story. And I think that that's pretty cool for fans of Golf Story, because this is really a sequel to Golf Story, and Golf Story, 2 years ago when that came out, was a huge hit. People were losing their minds for that game. It's not interesting to me. It's not appealing to me. I appreciate what it's trying to do, and I know that Golf Story was a great game, and I'm sure that Sports Story will also be a really great game, especially for fans of the first game. So I think that that's really cool, but it's nothing I'm really going to go out of my way to play. At first, it's oh, is this a Link to the Past inspired sort of game? Something paying homage to Zelda? Which I do think these games are trying to do. But then it turned into the sports thing, and I was oh, you're playing tennis and doing weird things that I just really don't care about in a game like this. So it did kind of turn me off, but again, I understand the quality, I understand the fanship, so I think it's pretty huge to see that Sports Story is even being made. I thought it was going to be Tennis Story at first, and then they're oh, it's Sports Story, and there's cars and basketball and all sorts of things. So yeah, I mean, for what it is, I think it's pretty cool. They then went on to show Streets of Rage 4, which does have me very excited, and they confirmed it's coming out in the first half of 2020, so that's also pretty cool news. Hopefully in the next, 6 months, basically, we should be seeing that game. And I'm really excited for this game because I am a child of the 90s, the 8 and 16-bit era. I grew up with the first 3 Streets of Rage games on the Genesis. Love them to death. So excited for this new game. And I go back and forth on the visuals because I'm kind of getting, sick and tired of these game companies relying on the hand-drawn art style for a lot of these game revivals. It's not my favorite. Sometimes it looks really great, don't get me wrong, but I wish they did something more artistically inspired, like using pixel art and polygons or something like that. I don't know. Something more than the hand-drawn art. I'm getting over it. However, this game does still look very good. So it's it's using an art style I'm getting tired of, but the way they're doing it does look very pleasing. So hopefully it just all comes together well. They confirmed that Adam is coming back. The gameplay looks amazing. It's just going to be a kick-ass Streets of Rage game. I feel we should feel kind of lucky to live in a time where we're even getting a Streets of Rage 4. It's a great call callback to classic gaming. And I just hope that it delivers, you know, the way I think a lot of us want it to. So I'm very, very excited for that. They then went on to show Gloomlight from publisher D3. Now, I don't know if this was a game that people were already familiar with or not, but the way the guy introduced it, I think that this was like a new reveal. And it's interesting because you can tell it basically is the exact same thing as what Hollow Knight is. And Hollow Knight is awesome. That is a game, it took me way too long to get to it, but by the time I did and I finally got like settled into that game, I found it to be absolutely fantastic. It's pretty hard, but it's definitely very, very good. And this game is really just the exact same looking thing, only with like a different kind of character. And so it's probably not going to use the whole like filling your soul for your health kind of thing. And they were really talking, you know, focusing on the lack of UI. So like, I don't know how to feel about this, because on one hand, it's like, well, I loved Hollow Knight, so give me more of that. Sure. Then on the other hand, it's like, okay, but it's just that. It's really just Hollow Knight with a different avatar as your character. How interesting or inventive really is that? And so, you know, the jury's still out. I'm not against it. I just don't know if I'm excited for it. I think this would have been an opportune time for them to talk about Silksong, the actual sequel to Hollow Knight. Where is that game? That did not show up today, and I found that to be pretty sad. A couple of other things that they went through, they showed this really interesting game called Super Mash, which is basically you take two different genres, you know, like top-down dungeon crawler, RPG, side-scrolling beat-em-up, whatever, and you put them together, and the game, like, auto-generates a game based on the mashing up of those two genres. The very first minute or two, I was like, this is just kind of, you know, weird, goofy stuff that's not for me. But the more I watched and the more I understood how it worked and what it did, I was like, oh, damn, this actually does look kind of cool. It's kind of like Scribblenauts for genres, whereas Scribblenauts was like, you know, put anything you want into the game and we're just going to create it. This is like, put any two genres together and we're going to create a whole game around it. So it's kind of the evolution of that sort of idea and technology as far as I see it. And it definitely surprised me as the trailer went on. Very, very impressive. So I'm going to kind of keep my eye out for that one. I may give in and play that game if it turns out to really be great. They also confirmed that the Talos Principle is coming to the Switch, and it's actually coming today. So they did the whole, oh, play it later today on Switch kind of thing. So that's pretty cool. That game, I think, has been out for quite a while, but it's supposed to be pretty good. Dauntless, another huge game that we know has been planned for the Switch for a while, also confirmed to be coming out today. And they spent a lot of time talking about the new DLC content and stuff coming out for it. So, I don't know. I mean, it's the kind of game that half of me thinks looks really cool and fun, and the other half of me is just sick of these sort of, you know, free-to-play, battle royale, monster hunting, squad up kind of games, you know, that are online only. I don't know. Stuff like Warframe and Fortnite and Paladins, and, you know, there's just such a big genre like this emerging that does what it does. It's even kind of, these are even like smaller tier games compared to like what Overwatch is. And they're not inherently bad, but they just really aren't for me, and it's just another one of those kinds of games, so I don't know. It is what it is. They then went on to show a game called Skatebird for late 2020, and man, this is so like dumb and ridiculous that it's actually kind of awesome, you know? It's like one of those things that's so ridiculous. It's like, why does this actually look good? This is the kind of thing I know my girlfriend would lose her mind for. And it's basically like Tony Hawk, except you're birds. It's like, and it's kind of one of those things where it's so random that that's what makes it interesting, you know? It's not necessarily the greatest idea, but it's like, okay, well, shoot, man, I guess that is what it is. And if the skating mechanics are decent, I guess I'm in. And it was a really kind of funny trailer, just seeing these birds just talking to each other and then riding skateboards around skate parks. I don't know. It's just kind of cute and endearing, and it just looks really funny. So that's that. They showed off this game called Liberated, which is like this noir detective, like a noir detective comic book style sort of game. Can't really tell exactly what the gameplay is supposed to be like, but I liked the aesthetic, and I liked what it looked like it was trying to do, so I thought that was pretty cool. Now, one of the few games that actually surprised me, and I think that I'm really interested in, is this game Dreamscaper, where it's really, you're just playing as this girl who, like, dreams herself into these randomly generated huge worlds with puzzles and dungeons, and you're fighting with a sword, and you're just doing this kick-ass, you know, top-down, isometric, like, dungeon crawling action and puzzle solving. But then in the real world, she's also having conversations with people and trying to form relationships or do something like that. I don't know. I really liked the graphic style. I really liked the way the action looked and the way she has, like, superpowers because she's in the dream world. It just looks like the kind of game that could really appeal to me, so I definitely want to see more about it because it was a surprise for me. They showed this game called The Survivalists from Team 17, and Team 17 is great. They're behind like Yooka-Laylee and stuff, which those are really good games. And so The Survivalist is not really for me, unfortunately, because it's I don't know. It's just more about like building and crafting and surviving and doing that kind of stuff, like Minecraft on like a top-down 2D plane. And that kind of gameplay is not for me and never really has been for me. But because I like Team 17, I did want to still kind of bring this game up and mention it. It's set in the Escapist universe, which I thought was kind of cool. So that's that game. And then the very last thing they showed was a huge surprise, a massive surprise for me. And it was Axiom Verge 2. Thomas Happ actually came on screen, the sole guy who created the first Axiom Verge, which is an amazing Metroid-inspired Metroidvania kind of game. Probably one of, if not the best ever. And he's like, hey, I've been toiling around on the next Axiom Verge, so here's a sneak peek. And they had like 40 seconds of gameplay from Axiom Verge 2. And at first I didn't know if it was going to be Axiom Verge 2 just kind of because of the way he framed it and because of the way it looked, because you're using a whole different character. The visuals look the same, but also slightly different. You're in a lot of different kinds of areas. You're outside with trees and sunshine and stuff. It just seems so different from the first Axiom Verge that I was like, is this just like a spiritual successor, or is this an actual sequel, or what's going on here? And then, yeah, they confirmed at the very end that it is Axiom Verge 2. Now, this is really crazy to me because, and I tweeted about this, I swear to God, I haven't played Axiom Verge in probably 2 years. I haven't turned that game on. And yesterday, when I was just trying to kill some time and I wasn't sure what I wanted to play, I literally was like, I'm going to pop on Axiom Verge for a couple minutes. And I played that game for about 15 or 20 minutes just randomly. I mean, I just cannot stress to you how freaking random it was that I turned that game on yesterday. And today, the sequel was announced. That is eerie and cryptic on a level that I just can't even explain. I can't even talk. Like, I'm so shocked by how that played out. That's really just a coincidence more than anything. But if we look at the actual game, I mean, it's more Axiom Verge. The music sounded great, just like the first game. I love the visual style. I love what the gameplay looks like. It's going to be a great sci-fi Metroidvania kind of game. And if you haven't played the original Axiom Verge, I highly, highly recommend you do. If you like Metroid or Metroidvania kinds of games, you've got to do it. You have to. I basically demand it. It's available on pretty much everything. I know it's on PS4, I believe Xbox One, but it's also for sure on the Switch and the Wii U. I don't know if it's on the 3DS or not. Maybe it's probably not on the 3DS, but it's on all the consoles, even the Wii U. So I can't stress it enough, you guys. Axiom Verge is great. Axiom Verge 2 is a huge megaton surprise for me. I am over the freaking moon. I think it's supposed to be fall 2020, but they didn't confirm that in the direct, in the show. So I don't know if that's really true, but it's, I think, a 2020 game, so we can look forward to this. So yeah, man, that was the Indie World Showcase. Pretty cool. You know, really only 2 or 3 games that I'm into, like I said. Axiom Verge and Dreamscaper and Streets of Rage have me really excited. Everything else I could kind of take or leave, and there's some games I didn't even talk about because I really didn't care about those. You know, the indie scene is not really for me, but there are great indie games out there that I have enjoyed, and this was a great show filled with a lot of games, and I would think that indie fans have a lot to be excited about. I think Sports Story is going to be a really big game coming out of this show because people are really big into that genre and that franchise. So that's what I think, man. Axiom Verge 2 floored me. So excited. What did you guys think of the Indie World Showcase? Did you enjoy it maybe more than I did? Did you not enjoy it? Are you an indie fan? Are you not an indie fan? However you feel, talk about it below. And with that, this video is a wrap. Thanks, of course, as always, for tuning in, guys. This is Rob of Rule of 2 Review, and I'll catch you next time on another video.